We were at Ben Lippen from 1992 to 2000. At about 2000, 1999, I went through what could be called anything, but the common way it's called is burnout. I was just burned out and resigned. Don Kaufman, who I had hired, took over as the principal. CIU was very kind. They kept paying me for a few months, and I got over that burnout or whatever and applied to Nebraska Christian, was accepted right away, and went out to the rural winters of Nebraska. Central City, Nebraska's about 90 miles west of Lincoln, at Nebraska Christian schools. Those were 6 delightful years. Number one, it's like, you're coming from Ben Lippen? Oh, that's the Harvard of the East. I said, no, it's not. But Ben Lippen was very well known throughout the Christian community, still is, because if there'd be a conference with the Association of Christian Schools International, it wouldn't be unlikely there'd be a Ben Lippen headmaster or somebody from CIU would be one of the instructors. So people knew about Ben Lippen, and so here I am out at Nebraska Christian. Those were wonderful years. I continued to recruit a couple times a year, sent about 10 different Nebraska Christian students and teachers to teach in China. Students, because our city was not large, Taiyuan, our students were juniors and seniors at Ben Lippen, spent 6 months or a year over there teaching at the high school level and at the university level even. Those were the days, Taiyuan not being a major city, when we could do that. Overall, in fact, Kathy and I have counted, since we first went to China, we have sent 40 different people to China, from 3 months to 3 years to 8 years. In all that time, only 2 people, 38 people have said, life-changing, so grateful. 2 people didn't like it. One person said, I don't like Chinese food. Why did you go there? And then the other person said, they're staring at me too much. So, I mean, you never cease to be amazed at people generally, but Kathy and I both feel really good about the number of people who have learned to love China because we convinced them to go. One girl in particular who I just saw the day before yesterday, she has 4 children now. She's one of the sweetest girls. Andy just interviewed her for putting it out in China. Her name is Tiffany. I walked into an international friendship ministry meeting maybe 12 years ago, and here's this blonde-haired girl serving Cokes and water in little cups, and I looked at her. One of my friends at Ben Lippen, introducing me to someone else later when I came back, said, oh, this is Dave Edgren. He's a nice guy, but you never know what he's going to say, and which is really true. I don't want or mean to be that way. That's just how I am. So here's this pretty girl, Tiffany. I knew that she was a spiritual guide. I had never met her before. But I looked at her and I said, hi, why aren't you in China? 5 words. And she said, and who are you? Kind of thing. But I have thought, if you're blonde and you go to China, you'll be teaching for several months before they figure that you're human. It's like you came from Mars. In fact, Andy and John, when we were in China, they were both light-haired. Emily was more blonde, but they put lipstick on Andy and John they took their pictures, and then they put lipstick on the pictures and put them in their Photoshop. And I mean, Andy and John were so mad at them, made them look like girls, because they just think light hair, that's a girl, kind of thing. But I'd say, why should I go to China? I mean, I've been there twice a year for like forever. Why don't you go? And so we had a whole bunch of people that went. But the times in Nebraska, although we froze to death, it's very cold. But the people in Nebraska are nobody locks their door. When they go to shop, they leave their car running. This is not Lincoln or Omaha, but other than Omaha at 400,000, Lincoln at 200,000, the next largest city is 40,000. Our town was 3,000. That's it. We had to drive 20 miles to McDonald's. There were other fast food places in our little town of Central City. But whereas at Ben Lippen, there was a lot of board personal involvement, like, why don't you hire so-and-so, or why did you hire this, or how dare you do this? And at Nebraska Christian, Dave, Mrs. John, one of the board members, I can't make it tonight, got to get the cows back, and we're not going to be there. And so I actually ran the school, and it was like night and day. Again, I have to be careful. When you're connected to university, they had an interest in what we were doing at Ben Lippen, and I understand all that, but it was refreshing to be at a place where they had adopted a policy called policy governance. There's a whole book called Policy Governance. The meaning of that is this guy named Carter, I think, wrote a book called Policy Governance. And the essence of policy governance in terms of what you teach a board, how a school board should work, that the school board says to the head administrator, we don't care what you do. You can do anything. We're not going to tell you what to paint the walls. What you do is up to you. There are only two things you cannot do. You cannot do anything unethical. You cannot do anything immoral. Other than that, we're not going to try to micromanage. Why did you hire so-and-so? Why did you do this? So, as an example, at Nebraska Christian, in Nebraska, you get out in rural Nebraska, you're having people drive 40 miles to school. Nebraska Christian was the only Christian school within 30, 40 miles of people. So they had what they called a resident program where even American kids would come and stay there during the week and go home 40, 50, 60, maybe 2-hour drive. But the program was dying because of homeschooling, whatever, it was dying. And they were losing money. They had dorm parents in both these dorms. And I said, either we're going to shut that down or we're going to start recruiting international students. And they said, we don't have any money to do that. Okay, well then let's shut down the program. Well, we'll find the money. You go to China, find the students. So that's where that program began. And by the time I left, we had 19 Chinese students and Taiwanese and some Koreans there too. So that was a great experience in the sense that when you are allowed as a leader to make mistakes and you're able to do things, the big thing that happened there was that I used to meet with these other administrators of public schools and private schools. Once a month, we'd meet with these people. One school had a 4-day school week. And I thought, well, that's intriguing. And I had one of the elementary principal, research that. 40% of the schools in Colorado run on a 4-day school week. I did the research, and we started the 4-day school week. And at first it was, what? And I have told my kids, and Emily and told Kathy, that if I had ever proposed a 4-day school week at a place like Ben Lippen, there'd be 5 board members screaming, and you can't do that, but you become a liberal. But because we were in the policy governance model, they were saying, I wonder if Dave Edgar's gone off the deep end here. But is it immoral? No. Is it illegal or unethical? No. And so now you go to Nebraska Christian 23 years later, and you say, what do you think about we love it so much. At first we worried about the international kids having so much time, but I just saw them a couple of years ago out there. I said, I'm the guilty guy that brought the 4 days. Oh, thank you, we love it. So again, when you managerial-wise, if it's not immoral and it's not unethical, there's some things we're not going to try to manage you on, kind of. But that really worked in Nebraska Christian. My wife tutored a lot of Koreans there. It was really great. It had a great auction. We had a great church that we went to. It was cold. People were warm, but snow would come and it wouldn't leave until April at best. In the international program, we had an auction, started a great auction there. Those were 6 good years. But finally, in the year 2006, Emily was still in Columbia, John and Hannah and Andy and Kim were still in Columbia. So let's go back and be with our family. So then we moved back to Columbia in 2006.